Excellencies, colleagues, first let me congratulate Pamela on her appointment. The International Trade Center is definitely in good hands. Colleagues, we are living in unprecedented times. COVID-19 has shaken our health, trade, economic, and natural systems to their core. Our daily lives and jobs have been upended. Supply chains have been halted, interrupted, or entirely overhauled. Millions of people in every country and region are losing their jobs. Colleagues, this year we witnessed the most unprecedented UN General Assembly in history. It took place during the worst global crisis since the early 1900s. And it took place during the 5-year anniversary of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and just before we celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. And we are also celebrating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. This is, across all markers, a year like no other. And as the Secretary General has said, this year we face another 1945 moment. It is in this unprecedented context in which I speak to you today about the most pressing crisis we face, climate change. I will first outline the latest climate science and then discuss the solutions before us in the form of transformational green recovery with sustainable trade policies at their core and a successful pathway to COP26 next year. Excellencies, amidst the crisis of this pandemic, climate change continues unabated. WMO recently released its United in Science report, which provides us with the latest scientific data and findings related to climate change. The key findings of the report underscore the urgency of addressing climate change. Greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere are at record levels. Emissions are returning to pre-pandemic levels following a short dip caused by the economic slowdown. The world is set to see its warmest 5 years on record, and it is not on track to keep global temperature rise to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level, a key goal of the Paris Agreement. Finally, the drivers of climate change. Emissions from fossil fuels are increasing the vulnerability of millions to COVID-19 and contributing to higher mortality rates. The pandemic is also disrupting our ability to respond to climate-related disasters, from epic floods to raging forest fires to increasingly more intense and frequent natural disasters. Colleagues, we are experiencing many firsts today as we enter a new era marked by a period of increasing climate disruption. And this brings me to where we need your support on business, economic and policy solutions, and particularly through trade and value chains. We owe it to our communities and constituents to quickly rebuild our economies after COVID-19 in a way that sets us on a new trajectory for people, planet, and prosperity. One that shifts our economic systems from green to gray and limits the increase in global temperature to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Governments all over the world, especially in the G20, are designing and announcing unprecedented stimulus packages to shore up key economic sectors, implement social protection instruments, and save struggling businesses. And corporates and banks are re-evaluating their business models and portfolios. This is our moment, our opportunity to shift course and implement the structural and transformative changes we need. It is in this context that the Secretary General has asked all leaders, governments and private sector alike, to commit to 6 climate positive actions. First, invest in green jobs. Second, do not bail out polluting industries unless these industries are aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement. Third, end fossil fuel subsidies and place a price on carbon. Fourth, take climate risks into account in all financial and policy decisions. Fifth, work together, strengthen multilateralism. And fifth and finally, ensure that stimulus and recovery packages leave no one behind. The European Union's pledge to green recovery and investment, some 550 billion euros to green projects over the next 7 years, is among the largest single climate pledges in history. The EU's commitment to mainstream climate change through all policies, the Do No Harm principle and the Just Transition Fund, are particularly important milestones for climate action and can serve as models for other countries and for other regions. I applaud the EU for its leadership, and I hope that leading institutions such as the International Trade Center, young people, the business community, and civil society leaders will hold the European Union to account as it implements these commitments and embeds the Secretary General's 6 climate positive principles into all COVID recovery measures. Colleagues, we must also remember that these principles apply to all leaders. Every sector, everyone, all walks of life must also lead. Every bank, institutional investor, and fund manager must adjust their business models to lead on climate change, price in climate risks in their investment decisions, and align with the principles of the Task Force on Climate-Related Disclosures. Every citizen must ask for their retirements and investments to invest in environmental, social governance equities and divest from fossil fuel aligned investments. Every trade agreement, global and bilateral, should mainstream climate action and incentivize the rapid decarbonization of global value chains. Trade policy must steer investments towards renewable energy, nature, and sustainable transport. And governments must lift the many barriers corporations and small businesses face when implementing policies aligned with climate action. For instance, corporate power purchase agreements have proven to be formidable tools to drive investments in renewable energy infrastructure. Governments must explore ways to include them in trade agreements. If leveraged, they could facilitate better grid connection between countries and between regions, leading to more renewable energy production and more renewable energy exports. We also need governments to provide and finance tools needed by small and medium enterprises to scale their own transition to climate-aligned investments and purchasing decisions. Governments must send clear market signals on public procurement standards and norms, the circular economy, and carbon pricing. Corporations all over the world are seeing the writing on the wall. And the global market moving companies such as Google and Microsoft have committed to become carbon neutral or even carbon negative by 2030. We need governments and corporations to do much more and much faster, to change their supply chains, not only to reduce emissions, but also to build resilience into them, and to invest in the technological innovation we need to truly transition to low emission transport and energy system. Excellencies and colleagues, in addition to shaping green recovery plans, the UN Climate Change Conference in 2021, or COP26, is our opportunity to show the world that governments, the private sector, and civil society leaders, cities, and subnational governments will step up and lead. Over the next year, we have an unprecedented chance to change course. Colleagues, we are at a critical juncture. We need all hands on deck. We need your voices to join that of the UN Secretary General in calling on governments to choose the pathway towards a green recovery from COVID-19. We have a historic window of opportunity as governments spend trillions on recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. As we respond to and recover from COVID-19, governments must hear from you about how climate action is good for business and good for trade. I count on you to use your voices, your business models, your leadership platforms to take the steps that the world urgently needs you to take. I thank you.